Having given other brands the original idea for compact SUV motoring, Honda has developed its own modern interpretation of what a car of this kind should be. The second generation HRV model, here usefully updated. It aims at the premium end of the Nissan Juke and Renault Captur class, offering smart looks, impressive safety credentials and the choice of petrol or diesel power. Buyers also get a brilliantly practical interior thanks to so-called magic seat ingenuity and a slightly larger body shape than is the norm in this sector. If you're shopping in this segment and you're prepared to stretch your budget a little, we think you'd probably like one.
Honda's HRV was designed to bring something a little different to the market for small, fashionable little SUVs. Like its crossover rivals from the Juke genre, this is essentially a Super Mini-based model, but at its original launch in 2015, we appreciated the fact that its more versatile interior offered more the kind of space that you expect to find in a medium-sized Qashqai class SUV from the next class up. In early 2019, the HRV was usefully updated, and that's the car that we're going to look at here. First, some background. Well done to you if you remember the very first generation HRV launched back in 1999, and probably the model that should have started the current seemingly insatiable craze for small SUV crossovers. Unfortunately for Honda, that car didn't have either the marketing, the peppy handling, or the visual pizzazz that would characterize the segment-defining Nissan Juke at its launch 11 years later. That original HRV, which was marketed as the Joy Machine, was withdrawn from Honda's range in 2006 and amazingly not replaced for European markets. It was a wasted opportunity. Still, the brand subsequently learnt from it, with proof of that delivered just under a decade later when the original version of this second generation design made its first appearance. Sales since have been relatively modest, partly because initial versions of this Mark II model lacked the overtly fashionable looks of trendier segment rivals, partly because Honda price positioned this car towards the top end of the small SUV sector, and partly because the early production numbers were limited by the Mexican factory's priority to satisfy the American market. Now, though, Honda is ready to get a little more serious about this growing segment, hence the need for this usefully updated HRV. Nothing too fundamental has been changed here. The outside look is a little smarter and the interior is of slightly higher quality. More significant, though, are the improvements in refinement and efficiency, and there's a fresh flagship variant too, the sport version that we're going to test here, which features a more powerful 182 PS 1.5 litre VTEC turbo petrol power plant, and that joins the existing normally aspirated 1.5 litre petrol and the 1.6 litre iD-Tech diesel units that are already offered in the range. All feature a key HRV selling point, a cleverly versatile magic seat interior, which makes every other car in the class seem cramped and compromised. Sounds rather promising. So should this underrated small SUV have previously been on your shopping list? Ought it to be now? Well, let's find out. For all the protestations of sportiness, most small SUV models are, to be frank, pretty forgettable to drive, which is rather predictable if you think about it. Taking a Super Mini and then giving it extra weight and a high-sided body isn't an ideal recipe for dynamic prowess. Fortunately, most potential customers seem to be easily satisfied in this regard, and the result is a bar that's been set fairly low for ride and handling in this segment. Come to this car with that in mind, and it's conceivable that you might be pleasantly surprised by the way that this HRV responds. In fact, right from the off, you have a feeling that this might be one of the better compact crossovers to punt along, even if you've only opted for one of the mainstream models that almost all buyers choose, either those featuring the 1.5 litre normally aspirated iD-Tech petrol unit or a 1.6 litre iD-Tech turbo diesel. For a start, you don't get an especially lofty driving position, even though Honda insists that your eye line in an HRV is 100 mils higher than it would be in a Civic or a Jazz. That is annoying from an all-round visibility point of view, but it does make you feel a bit happier about throwing the car into a bend. Do that in any HRV and you'll find a surprisingly high degree of traction on offer, aided by what Honda calls SDC, a synaptic damping control system, which automatically modifies damping force according to the road surface and to driving conditions. Here we haven't just got any old HRV though. The company was keen that we should test the new range topping derivative, which was added as part of the second generation model's mid-term update, a sports variant which alone gets the 1.5 litre VTEC turbo petrol engine first developed for the current Civic hatch, and also used by the brand's slightly larger and better known crossover, the CRV. Here it's supplied in a 182 PS form, which is enough power to make this car agreeably rapid and propels it to 62 miles an hour from rest in just 7.8 seconds on the way to a top speed of 133 miles an hour. Fortunately, Honda hasn't just shoehorned this more powerful unit in and left the existing chassis and suspension setup to cope with it. Actually, quite a lot's been added here to try to make the driving experience a little more dynamic, a key extra inclusion being the brand's Agile Handling Assist setup. Now this is basically a torque vectoring system which works with the vehicle's stability system, transferring torque to the wheels that can best use it at speed through tight corners. There's also a variable gear ratio power steering system that weights the helm up a little more through the bends, and stiffer performance dampers that we think typical HRV buyers might find a little over firm. It's quite a nice little engine this. It accelerates strongly from around 2,000 RPM and it only really starts to run out of puff once you crest the 5,000 RPM mark. Like many Honda units, it doesn't have a great amount of pulling power, but that's not really a problem because it provides plenty of reason to use this lovely snickety-slick 6-speed manual gear change. Why can't other brands produce a gear shift that's as good as this? Well, that is assuming, of course, you have chosen a manual sport model. Your dealer will offer you the alternative CVT automatic, which we would suggest you avoid. The engine torque figure, normally 240 newton meters, that has to be reduced by 20 newton meters to accommodate that belt-driven box. That's just one of the things that make a CVT sport variant feel significantly less eager. And of course, with an auto, it won't be as easy to rev the engine out and enjoy its perky, urgent note. It's embellished here with an active sound control feature which amplifies the engine note rather effectively through the stereo speakers. In a more ordinary HRV, of course, an owner's more probable priority will lie in reducing engine noise rather than increasing it, something that Honda's put a lot of effort into as part of the changes made to the revised version of this Mark II model. Extra insulating material has been added around the front bulkhead and the wheel arches, the boot structure and the front and rear door panels too. Plus there are sound-absorbing carpets, dashboard acoustic pad inserts, and on the plusher models, even an active noise cancelling system. This uses 2 in-cabin microphones that search for low-frequency interior noises and then try to cancel them out with precisely timed reverse-phase audio signals emitted through the speakers. Wouldn't it be great if every maker of a small SUV put that much effort into improving refinement? Here it's really paid off. Honda says that at a constant 62 miles an hour, there's a whisper quiet 65 decibels of cabin noise. That's with the most affordable, normally aspirated petrol unit that most HRV customers tend to choose, another 1.5 litre iVTEC power plant, this one putting out 130 PS. Given that the HRV is based on the third generation version of Honda's Jazz Super Mini, you might perhaps have expected volume versions of it to use that car's 1.3 litre iVTEC unit, but that engine didn't have enough pulling power to push this rather heavy little crossover along. It can, after all, weigh up to 1.4 tonnes when it's fully fueled. To be honest, a test drive in a base petrol HRV might leave you wondering whether even the 1.5 litre unit has quite enough torque for the job in hand. The on-paper performance stats: rest to 62 in 10.7 seconds, en route to 119 miles an hour. They look fine, but like the turbo petrol power plant, the base VTEC unit has to be revved quite a lot if you're going to get all it's got. And that's an attribute that's rather at odds with the way that many of Honda's more mature owners like to drive. In fact, the modest pulling power on offer, 155 newton meters of torque, isn't all delivered until you thrash the thing up to 5,000 RPM. To put that in perspective, the 1 litre TSI engine you get in a rival Skoda Kamiq or Volkswagen T-Cross develops everything from just 1,400 RPM. In other words, if you're going to push along a bit in a volume petrol HRV, you'll have to adopt a somewhat different style of driving. At least there is this lovely gear shift action to make it less of a hardship. We mentioned earlier in talking about that turbo power plant that you don't have to have a stick shift. It's the same with the feebler, normally aspirated unit. With the lower powered engine, the CVT Auto makes more sense. It won't matter so much that the rubber belt driven transmission doesn't take kindly to being hurried. It emits the usual strained CVT whine under hard acceleration, despite Honda's efforts to improve things with a more natural multi-gear feel. Around town, the whole setup is of course far more in its comfort zone, and it comes into its own, shifting smoothly and delivering considerably better levels of efficiency than the manual model can manage. Unless you really are urban bound though, we'd urge you to stick with the manual HRV model, and in fact you'll have to do that if you go for the diesel variant. Now this 1.6 litre iD-Tech unit is getting on a bit now, but it's still recognised as one of the better engines of its kind on the market. Don't be deceived by the fact that its 120 PS power output is a little less than you get with the base petrol version. It's more important to note that it puts out 300 newton meters of torque, so it offers you nearly twice as much pulling power as you'd get in that normally aspirated petrol variant. That gives you a slightly faster 10.1 second 0 to 62 time en route to 119 miles an hour, but the real benefit is far more relaxed progress, easier overtaking, and much less need for cog swapping. For us, that's the ideal engine for this car. Having got the under-bonnet stuff right, what else will you experience in any ordinary HRV? Well, there's obviously no off-road shenanigans on offer here, with just 170mm of ride height on offer. That would be unwise, although light field tracks and muddy car parks ought to be well within this Honda's remit. All of that makes unnecessary any provision for four-wheel drive. The Jazz-derived platform wouldn't permit that anyway. On a paved surface, as with most small SUVs, there's a little more body roll through the bends than you get in an ordinary hatchback, but it is decently controlled and predictable. More of an issue is ride quality that can struggle with poorer urban surfaces and the lack of feedback through the power steering. The light response is great in town, of course, but at speed through tight corners, it really needs to be a little more feelsome, particularly as so much else about this car is so engaging. Honda clearly wants the facelifted version of the second generation HRV to have more universal appeal than its rather bland-looking predecessor, the idea being this time around to reach a wider cross-section of buyers. If you like the idea of a small SUV, but you find the Nissan Juke too willfully outlandish, a Peugeot 2008 rather bland, and a Jeep Renegade rather ugly, then this perhaps could be your car. The so-called coupe-like SUV looks are stylish enough to stand out without making a statement likely to offend anyone. The main change made as part of this styling refresh is the new nose section, which brings the looks into line with that of the brand's current Civic hatch. The previous so-called solid wing face styling graphic wasn't particularly eye-catching, but here it's been reinterpreted with this high-gloss dark chrome panel, which is now flanked by smarter headlamps incorporating LED daytime running lights. Lower down, circular fog lamps sit in deeper air intake sections in the front bumper, which on this top sport variant have a honeycomb finish, and that also features on the front grille garnish. Other sport additions include full LED headlight beams and a slim black front splitter. On all HRVs, strong swage lines flow up the high-set bonnet into the raked-back windscreen. The side perspective reveals an interesting piece of market positioning. And with almost 4.3 metres of length, you get a more spacious body shell than you might expect a small SUV to deliver. This car is, for example, 84 millimetres longer than the latest version of the segment-defining Nissan Juke. Honda reckons that makes this HRV a viable alternative to family hatchback-based SUVs from the next class up, models that upper-spec versions of this car have been priced against. The tape measure, though, suggests otherwise. In that larger class, a Nissan Qashqai, for example, is longer by 100 millimetres, a Peugeot 3008 by 153 mils, and a Renault Kadjar by 195 mils. Really, this car sits somewhere between those two segments, aiming to offer the manoeuvrability of a small SUV together with some of the space of a mid-sized model. It's not a unique approach. Bigger small crossovers in this segment like Mitsubishi's ASX and the Suzuki SX4 S-Cross claim to be able to do much the same thing. However you define this model, its styling certainly reflects the kind of sporty feel that SUV customers now seem to want from fashionable compact contenders of this sort. The tapering rear roofline, this forward-leaning stance. In profile, get the usual upper and lower character lines, plus this extra one that starts halfway up the front door and flows back upwards with a flourish into the rear C-pillar, which artfully conceals the rear door handles. Black door mirror caps, side skirts, special wheel arch mouldings and matte black 18-inch alloy wheels distinguish this sport model. Lesser HRVs feature either 16 or 17-inch rims. At the rear, a crescent-shaped styling crease still links the lower part of the rear light clusters, but above the lumbar plate, these lamps are now connected by a dark chrome garnish across the tailgate that mirrors the trim at the front. These rear lights now sit within dark lens casings. Twin exhaust pipes plus smoked lamp clusters with LED illumination distinguish this sport variant. Under the skin, as before, sits the same platform that Honda developed for its third generation Jazz Super Mini, onto which is bolted a particularly rigid body shell, 27% of which is fashioned from high-strength steel. Time to take a seat inside. In its original form, there wasn't much wrong with this cabin that a few nicer materials, plastics and fabrics wouldn't have put right. So that's what Honda has done with this revised design. The Mexican factory has been prevailed on to fit a few more soft touch surfaces, some subtly accented with brushed chrome highlights, plus the seats have been redesigned with smarter fabrics and with extra supporting bolsters, although they still can't be had with lumbar adjustment. Higher grade models like this one feature a combination of fabric and leather with double stitching for a more appealing finish. Plus, this rather eye-catching dual-colour dash. Otherwise, it's all very much as before, which means you don't get a particularly highly raised driving position, although the driver's eye line is 100mm higher than it would be in a Jazz. Something else that not everyone will like is this rather curious 70s-style wide-flow air outlet situated ahead of the front seat passenger. It groups three different vents together, each operable via its own rather cheap-feeling control tab. As usual in a Honda, the gear stick falls ideally to hand. This one's small and beautifully weighted, and through the three-spoke multifunction steering wheel you're presented with a prominent speedometer that's surrounded by blue circular lighting and which contains an empty centre section that you can't help feeling really ought to be filled by something. Now, this gauge is flanked by two smaller circular instruments. The left-hand one shows revs, while the one on the right is a TFT screen that shows key driving data, although it does so using rather low-rent graphics. Many of these features are recognisable from other Honda models, and here's another, the 7-inch Connect colour infotainment touchscreen that's situated in the centre of the dash. Provided you avoid entry-level trim, which gets instead a cheaper-looking 5-inch monitor, this Connect setup comes as standard, controlling a reasonable quality 180-watt 6-speaker DAB stereo and informational functions, incorporating a Garmin navigation system and providing full internet browsing when you're stationary. stationary. Even Honda privately admits that this setup is rather in need of a revamp when it comes to its size, its graphics and its screen refresh times. Plus, it needs embellishment with Apple CarPlay and Android Auto smartphone mirroring. You can at least download your favourite apps onto the touchscreen via the Honda App Centre, and in fact one key app, Aha, will come preloaded with the system. This gives you access to thousands of stations of audio, spanning everything from music to news, podcasts to audiobooks, plus social media and location-based services. The integrated interface should make finding everything from a Twitter account to weather updates so easy that even tech-shy Luddites ought to be able to do it. And Aha also includes point-of-interest searches and helps users to locate things like nearby restaurants and hotels. It all works very well, our only issue being that the icons on this screen are very touch sensitive, as indeed are those on the climate control panel that you get just below the Honda Connect display on most models. That makes some of the functions a bit trickier to activate on the move than conventional switches and buttons would be. You have to be ultra precise touching the on-screen graphics, otherwise your commands will just go ignored. As for storage space, well, that's reasonable. True, the door bins and the glove box could be bigger, but you do get this useful concealed area at the bottom of the center console, plus provision of an electronic handbrake frees up space for this recessed double cup holder section, which features a neat integrated clip-out attachment to keep your drinks in place. Behind that, there's this lidded box that contains a coin tray and a deep cubby. Let's take a seat in the rear. Well, you'll find that the HRV is one of the most spacious models in the compact crossover class. Now, true, as with most cars in this sector, you would struggle to fit 3 adults across the back seat for any length of time, but 2 people will be more comfortable than they could expect to be in, say, a Nissan Juke, or even something more comparably priced like a Fiat 500X. The only slight issue might be headroom. In most variants this shouldn't be a problem despite the sloping rear roofline, but on a plush EX model there could be an issue for taller folk thanks to the way that the ceiling height is slightly limited by a large glass panoramic roof. Unfortunately, the reclining rear backrest that you would get in Honda's Jazz isn't on hand to help alleviate that problem, nor across the range will the seat bases slide in the way they would, say, in a rival Renault Captur. Still, it is certainly more spacious back here than is the case with most small SUVs in this segment. Seat back pockets, they only come as standard on the plusher models, and these door pockets can only take a pretty small bottle of water. What really marks this HRV apart from its contemporaries, though, is the packaging brilliance of its so-called magic seat system. Now, this is something that sadly you can no longer have in the brand's Civic family hatch, and it's made possible by this Honda's centre-mounted fuel tank layout. Now, this liberates the floor of the cabin and allows all kinds of interior permutations. Let's take just one of them, the Magic Seat Tour mode, where the front of the rear seat base rises up and can be locked in a vertical position to leave a cargo height of 1,240 mils from floor to ceiling, allowing the object in question to be placed behind the front seats. It's ideal for tall, fragile items, maybe a small potted tree that you bought from the garden centre, or perhaps a bulky item of electrical equipment. The other 2 magic seat settings relate to the more conventional cargo configurations that we'll have a look at now. Raise the rear hatch and you'll note the wide cargo opening and the low loading lip that pave the way towards a conveniently shaped boot that's VDA rated at 431 litres and is pretty spacious by small SUV class standards. In fact, it's much the same size as that of a Nissan Qashqai from the next class up, able to take up to 6 carry-on suitcases. Supposedly larger compact SUVs like Volkswagen's T-Roc, the Mini Countryman and Audi's Q2 can only take 5. Avoid an HRV in entry-level spec and you get this false boot floor under which 2 further carry-on cases could fit if need be. It's an impressive showing by class standards. To help make good use of this capacity, you can also specify an optional anti-slip boot tray with dividers or a premium boot organizer. Now that adds rails onto the base of the cargo area onto which you can clip telescopic arms. As standard, you get tie-down hooks and this 12-volt socket. But let's say you need more room and you want to push forward the 60/40 split folding rear seats to, for example, store something like a bicycle. Now that's when you move into the Magic Seat System's utility mode. And the first thing you notice with that is the ease of the folding process. Now often with cars of this kind, you have to mess about pulling seat bases forward before you can then drop the rear backrest, and that sometimes has to have the rear head restraints detached too, or if not that, then you'll be stuck with a backrest that simply flops forward and just doesn't give you a flat loading floor. Here, all you have to do is release a simple lever mechanism and push forward from the rear and just watch as the backrest and the seat base retract together into the rear footwell in one quick fluid motion. That creates a 1,845mm long flat floor and a VDA rated total capacity that measures in at 1,473 litres. Again, more than most competitors can offer. So yes, you can easily store something as bulky as a bike. And longer items too. If you're not using the front passenger seat, then there's the option to recline that as part of the final Magic Seat long mode. With that done, items as long as 2,445mm can be accommodated. That could be just enough for more adventurous owners to fit in things like a pair of downhill skis or maybe even a surfboard. This HRV is sized between small and mid-sized SUVs and it's priced between the two. The asking figures range in the £20,000 to £29,000 bracket. In the mainstream range, buyers choose S, SE or EX trim levels and opt for either a 1.5 litre iVTEC normally aspirated petrol unit, or they pay an £1,800 premium and get the alternative iDTEC 1.6 litre turbocharged diesel. The other engine on offer, the 1.5 litre VTEC turbo petrol power plant that we're trying here, that is restricted to this flagship sport variant. The option of CVT automatic transmission, now that costs £1,200 more, is only available on the petrol models. Let's drill down into the price structure a little and bear in mind that the next SUV up in Honda's range, the CRV, which uses much the same 1.5 litre petrol turbo unit that features in this sport model, is priced from around £26,000, although most CRV variants are priced in the £30,000 to £35,000 bracket. Anyway, we said the HRV range is priced from just over £20,000, but that only gets you the rather Spartan S-spec trim level that few HRV buyers want. So it's best to think of the price starting point for the lineup being somewhere between £23,000 and £25,000. That budget will get you either a petrol or a diesel model with mid-range SE trim. You'll need a £28,000 to £29,000 for this turbo petrol sport model, which in our view is a difficult sum to justify for an SUV of this sort. There's not really much point in pointing out that tinier models in the small SUV segment with smaller capacity engines, Nissan Jukes, Renault Captures and so on, can cost you a lot less. Of course they do. You're getting less in return. You won't pay a lot less, though, for the Volkswagen Group entrants in this segment. Skoda's Kamiq, Seat's Arona and also the Volkswagen T-Cross. And an Audi Q2, well, that would actually cost you slightly more than Honda's asking here. We think it's slightly more relevant here, though, to focus on compact Super Mini-based SUVs which share this HRV's goal of providing near Qashqai class standards of interior space. Of these, we'd pick out 3 models in particular. Suzuki's SX4 S-Cross, that costs a little less than this Honda, but it uses less powerful petrol engines. Mitsubishi's ASX. None of these cars, though, can offer anything like the versatility of Honda's Magic Seat interior configuration system, nor or, by the way, can supposedly larger family hatch-based SUVs like Nissan's Qashqai and Seat's Attica, which could be yours for a similar spend on what Honda's asking here. If, having considered all that, you conclude that it is a Honda HRV that you really want, then you're going to need to know exactly how generous the Japanese brand has been with the standard spec. Time for the detail on that then. Now, not many buyers opt for the base spec S models, which don't have the infotainment provision, which is fitted further up the range, and even lack a DAB radio. That really does seem like an astonishing omission on a 20,000 mile car in this day and age. You don't get something as basic as a rear parcel shelf either, or the adjustable height boot floor, which is so useful further up the range. Otherwise though, the base of the lineup, kit levels are reasonable. Base S-Spec gives you 16-inch alloy wheels, daytime running lights, auto headlamps, electric mirrors, all-round power windows, an alarm and a neat shark fin roof antenna. Inside you get Honda's clever Magic Seat system, along with a fold-flat front passenger seat. That's a rare inclusion in this segment. Plus there's air conditioning, a multi-information display trip computer, driver's seat height adjustment, a multifunction steering wheel, and cruise control with a speed limiter to help preserve your license through roadworks or urban areas. Infotainment provision is limited to Bluetooth phone connectivity, a USB port, and a 4-speaker, 160-watt AM/FM radio that's accessed via a 5-inch centre dash screen. If you've decided on an HRV but you want to treat yourself to something a bit nicer than S-level trim, then you have the choice of either finding around £3,000 more to upgrade to mid-range SE spec, or find a premium of around £5,500 above S-level trim and go for the plushest EX variant. Now you'll need one of these plusher trim levels if you're going to have a car fitted with the Honda Connect 7-inch colour infotainment touchscreen with its Garmin navigation system, internet radio access and USB connectivity. You also get a better quality 6-speaker 180-watt DAB audio system and app integration, although no access to the Apple CarPlay and Android Auto smartphone mirroring systems that most rivals offer. Other highlights of SE trim include larger 17-inch alloy wheels, front fog lights, front and rear parking sensors, heated powered folding mirrors, rain sensing wipers, a rear parking camera, climate control, leather for the steering wheel and for the gear knob, and a package of safety items that we'll cover off in a moment. Plus that missing rear parcel shelf tonneau cover and the adjustable height boot floor. They both finally make an appearance. If you can push the boat out and get yourself top EX spec, then there's full LED headlights, roof rails, leather upholstery, heated front seats, a smart keyless entry and start system, front LED fog lights, an auto dimming rear view mirror and a huge panoramic glass roof, one of the very biggest in the segment. Here though, as we've been saying, we've opted for the Sport model with its standalone 1.5 litre VTEC turbo petrol engine. This variant gets a more dynamic look, courtesy of matte black 18-inch alloy wheels, twin exhaust pipes, a dark chrome front grille, black door mirror caps, side skirts, special wheel arch mouldings and a slim black front splitter. You also get full LED headlights and front fog lights, while inside there's fabric and leather combination upholstery, sports pedals and heated front seats. As for driving stuff, well, there are firmer performance dampers, a variable gear ratio power steering setup and Honda's traction enhancing agile handling assist system. Whichever variant you choose, the standard spec will cover most of what you're going to need, but if you do want to go further, then your dealer will be very happy to tell you about the various key options on offer. Do bear in mind that you'll probably be paying Honda extra for your choice of paint colour. Now we have polished metal metallic here. 2 fresh paintwork shades have been added for this revised range: midnight blue beam metallic and platinum white pearl. Who thinks of these names? As for sensible extras, well, we'd want to look at the premium boot organiser, which adds rails to the base of a cargo area, onto which you can clip telescopic arms which slide back and forth and which enable you to compartmentalise the space and prevent smaller items from rolling around. You could alternatively go for an anti-slip boot tray with dividers. If you'll be using your HRV for outdoor activities, you might want the optional detachable tow bar or the twin base carrier roof rails you'll need for the overhead carriage of things like cycles, skis, roof boxes and snowboards. Otherwise, the options are mainly aimed at aesthetic trimming, and to be frank, they're fairly unnecessary. You might like the speaker ring lighting or the illumination pack with its glowing door sill finishes, and there's nothing wrong with the premium pack. That gives you side body trims, doorstep garnishes, smart carpet mats and mudguards. We would think twice though about the silvery embellishment of the chrome pack, the sporty bumpers, the running boards and the tailgate spoiler of the aero pack, or the SUV style skid plates and silver door mirror caps of the robust pack. Keeping things simple is often the best way when it comes to preserving those all-important residual values. The doorstep garnishes, the tailgate spoiler, the side body trims and the silver mirror caps can all be ordered separately, as can a set of diamond cut 18-inch alloy wheels. On to safety, where the highlight standard fit feature across the range is Honda's City Brake Active System. Now this is there to scan the road ahead for potential collision hazards at speeds of under 20 miles an hour. If one's detected, you'll be warned. If you don't respond, or perhaps you aren't able to, then the car will automatically brake itself to decrease the severity of any resulting accident. Now this builds on the usual features you now expect on a car of this kind. There are no fewer than 8 airbags, including twin front, side and full-length curtain bags, anti-whiplash head restraints, ISOFIX child seat fastenings, a tyre deflation warning system and hill start assist, which stops you from drifting backwards on uphill junctions. Plus there's Honda's so-called ACE body structure, and that's based around the company's advanced compatibility engineering approach, which forms the foundation for excellent passive safety performance. This is further aided by the impressively strong basic rigidity of Honda's body structure, 27% of which is constructed in high-strength steel. What else? Well, there's stability control, of course, Honda's VSA, Vehicle Stability Assist System, plus the usual ABS braking setup with a brake assist feature to help in emergency stops. And those will be advertised to following motorists by automatically activating hazard lights. You also get an EDDB, early downshift during braking system, which automatically increases engine speed to provide engine braking in deceleration, downhill or cornering situations. And there's what Honda calls a fast off feature, which maintains engine revs if you come off the throttle pedal too quickly, as you might do, say, if you've pulled up to overtake, but you've had to suddenly abandon the manoeuvre. And that's the sort of scenario that might cause a skid on an icy morning. It's all very welcome, and this HRV goes further still. Providing you avoid entry-level trim, your car will also come fitted with a package of 5 other key features. You get a high-beam support system, which automatically dips your headlights for you at night in the face of oncoming traffic. Plus, there's a forward collision warning system, which monitors the distance and the closing rate between you and the vehicle in front as you drive, and it'll warn you when you get too close. For peace of mind on longer distance journeys, there is also a lane departure warning system. Now that will stop dozy drivers from veering out of their lanes on the highway. And there's also a traffic sign recognition system. Now this pictures road signs as you pass them and then displays them on the dash. Now that last name feature drives what is arguably the cleverest element of this rather impressive safety package, the intelligent speed limiter. Now, from the traffic sign recognition system, this setup knows what the prevailing speed limit is, and it won't let you break it unless you persist on the throttle. Now, theoretically, that might make speed tickets a thing of the past. Honda tells us that all three HRV power plants feature its Earth Dreams technology. That's engineering dedicated to maximum efficiency. That and the fact that this car is based on the underpinnings of a Super Mini might encourage expectations of greater cleanliness and frugality than this model is actually capable of delivering. Actually, like all compact SUVs, it's somewhat hobbled by its extra weight. One of these weighs around 130 kilos more than the little Jazz model it's based on, and it's also quite a bit heavier than rival small SUVs. The Nissan Juke, for example, can be up to 125 kilos lighter, which is why higher capacity engines are needed to push this crossover along. With both the 1.5 litre petrol units and with the 1.6 litre diesel, the engineers have done what they can to get the most from what's available. The normally aspirated iVTEC petrol engine, for example, gets a high compression ratio, very low levels of internal friction, super effective exhaust gas recirculation system, and electronic operation for the variable timing control to optimise valve timing. For this facelifted model, this iVTEC unit also features what the brand calls advanced plateau honing, which lowers the friction levels between the pistons and the cylinder bores by creating an ultra smooth surface. Its timing chain guides also feature a new friction reducing coating, which further helps to reduce long-term wear and boost engine efficiency. All that engineering effort has been aided by this car's particularly slippery shape, which isn't just down to the flush-fitting bodywork. Beneath the vehicle, three covers under the engine, the front floor and the rear floor, help to smooth and optimise the airflow. And we should also mention the fact that there's 6 rather than 5 speeds with the manual gearbox, and of course Honda has provided the expected stop-start system to cut the engine when you don't need it, when you're stuck at lights or waiting in traffic. If you've got the Honda Connect infotainment system, then various fuel-related trip computer readouts are provided to demonstrate how successful your recent efforts at frugality have been. So that drivers can thoroughly play their part, this green Econ button is provided. Pressing it restricts engine torque and tweaks the engine mapping, the transmission and the air conditioning for greater frugality. You also get an Eco Assist feature that gives you lighting around the speedometer. Now this glows white when you're pressing on, or green with more fuel efficient driving that you'll be able to monitor via the readings recorded on the Honda Connect infotainment screen. The Garmin navigation system, that also helps out with the option of so-called eco-routing. The result of all this effort should see both manual and CVT automatic 1.5 litre iVTEC petrol variants return up to 42.8 mpg on the WLTP combined cycle. WLTP configured CO2 is rated at up to 148 grams per kilometre for the manual and up to 150 for the automatic. For this 1.5 litre VTEC Turbo Petrol Sport variant, the figures are 42.4 mpg and 151 grams per kilometre for the manual version, and 39.8 mpg and 162 grams per kilometre for the CVT Auto. Go for a 1.6 litre iDTEC diesel, which is manual only, and inevitably things improve dramatically. You're looking at up to 56.6 mpg on the combined cycle and 132 grams per kilometre of CO2. Overall, these aren't class-leading figures, certainly, but they're good enough to keep this HRV competitive in the segment. And the emissions showing means that all HRVs will cost £145 in annual road tax. Where this Honda does have a clear advantage over most of its rivals is when it comes to residual values. Expect around 41 to 45% of your original purchase price back after the industry standard 3-year, 60,000 mile ownership period. That is a considerable improvement over what you get from a rival Duke, Renault Captur or Fiat 500X. Few SUVs in this class break the 40% barrier. The 3-year, 90,000 mile warranty is better than the package that you'll get from many competitors too, and in addition, surface corrosion is covered for 3 years, exhaust corrosion is covered for 5, chassis corrosion is covered for 10 years, and structural corrosion for 12 years. Service intervals on all engines are every year or every 12,000 miles, whichever comes around first, and many customers will want to budget ahead for scheduled maintenance with a fixed price scheme called 5 This includes 5 years worth of maintenance and extended warranty for that period, and roadside assistance breakdown cover should the unexpected happen. Now this can be transferred to a new owner if you sell the car on before the service plan has expired. Finally, we can tell you that insurance is reasonable. The 1.5 litre iVTEC petrol variant, that's rated at either Group 19 or 20, depending on trim level. For the 1.6 litre iDTEC, it's Group 20 or 21. And for this petrol turbo sport variant, it's Group 27. There are so many small SUVs now on sale that you wonder whether any of them really offer anything different. Refreshingly, this HRV does. It's a touch more spacious than other cars in the class, with superior practicality that you can really make the most of thanks to the brilliantly flexible Magic Seat system that offers MPV-style interior flexibility. Alongside sophisticated design and strong standards of safety, this setup aims to justify premium pricing, and if for you it does, then there's plenty else to like about this Honda. In its improved form, this car looks a little more distinctive, and the cabin is certainly smarter. Plus, on the move, refinement has been significantly improved. We're slightly less enthused about this sports variant, now the HRV lineup's flagship model. Viewed in isolation, it's actually a very nice product, but it's priced at a level that'll be difficult for potential buyers to justify. Plus, we think a typical HRV buyer will find the suspension somewhat over firm. And in summary, well, overall, we continue to like the HRV. The brand still isn't importing enough for it to become a mainstream choice, but then this was never going to be a high-volume model. It will instead appeal to those in search of the cleverest and the most versatile car of this kind. High fashion is all very well, but its charms do tend to fade. We think the appeal of this Honda is less likely to.